Wow, I am so pale. This is ridiculous. That's what I get for being in the hospital while the sun's out, basically. Crazy thing, my hair, I haven't cut it since day one of medical school, which has now kind of become a competition with myself just to see how long I can get it. And it's pretty cool. I mean, look how long this is. It's kind of crazy. It's the longest I've ever had my hair. Sometimes I look homeless, depending on if I have a beard or not, but yeah, this is crazy. What's up, guys? It's been a long time since I've done a video. Third year really gets the best of you as a medical student. And it just makes me realize that at the end of second year, when you go through all your didactic years, that you really know nothing. You know nothing until you go through your rotations and actually apply that information you learned to real people. So glad to be coming to an end and starting fourth year, which I'll have a lot more time and able to do a lot more videos. So you're gonna be seeing a lot more from me in the next coming year, which will be awesome because it's a lot of good content. I think it'll be a lot of good information for you guys, both people in medical school or interested in medical school, or people interested in just medicine in general, because I'll be doing a bunch of topics on a whole sloth of things. Sloth, I don't know if that's a term. No, it's not a term. On a whole wide variety of things. So it's gonna be a fun year, and I've got some cool videos coming up. It's gonna be teaching you how to do like a fast exam with ultrasound in the trauma setting, how to scrub in for surgeries. I wanna start off this thing with talking about a cool opportunity that one of my wife's cousins is doing. Her name is Natalie Handler, and she was nominated for Woman of the Year for the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society. Basically what it is she's raising awareness and financial support, and really any kind of support for the society to help research and help paying for families going through all these kind of things. That's what she's doing. She has a goal for raising $50,000, and there's a bunch of ways you can donate. So I'm gonna throw that link down below. Definitely go check it out. Natalie, we're super proud of you, and we wish you nothing but the best. Topic that I kind of wanted to hit today, to kind of do just a quick video and do it as succinct and efficiently as possible, because there could be a lot here to talk about, but it's step one studying. Now that all the first years are transitioning into second year and we have a new batch of first years coming in, the question I get all the time and also on here is, how did I study for step one? I did really well on my step one, and people always ask, what did you do and what is your advice, starting medical school to start prepping for it? Step one is a huge test that kind of defines what kind of career you can go into as a physician. It's the end of your second year after all your didactics, and it's a big test. It's a big thing. So let's jump into it and let's just start talking about it. Also, you guys like my TV? I'm going to kind of talk about day one of medical school up into the test day and kind of give you my advice and kind of what all medical students kind of do to study for this big exam coming up. So let's start with day one. It's your first year of medical school. Do not study for step one. I'm telling you, so many people are like, get prepped to get all the materials and start like looking over all that first year. I don't think it's helpful. I think there's just way too much information and it's out of context. You haven't experienced medical school yet, and it's completely different than undergrad. My general advice for first year is to not study for step one. You're kind of studying for step one as you go through your classes, so just focus on your classes. My advice is to, learn how to study for this kind of information, this amount of information, and this density of information. It's a lot. It's more than you'll ever have again, and it's more than you've had in undergrad. So you kind of have to adjust your studying style. I know I did, and I think most people did as well. In medical school, it's a little different. There's just so much information, and it's just very difficult to keep up and master everything. So learn how to study. Learn how to study in medical school for that amount of information and the amount of density in that information itself. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. Get to know your classmates. These will be your colleagues in the future. Let's jump into like the transition between first and second year. By this time, you should start buying your materials to start studying for step one, and we'll kind of go over what those materials are. So there's kind of 4 things or 5 things that are the mainstay of studying for step one, at least in my opinion. And remember, my opinion is one of many. Take it with a grain of salt and understand that there are many other opinions out there, and you should go check out the other opinions and see kind of which one sticks with you and what ideas you like. First thing you should buy, of course, is the famous first aid for step one. This is going to be your Bible for studying for step one. Everything you need to know is bullet pointed in here, and it's just a very high yield, resource for all the things that you have to know for step one. It's kind of broken up into 2 parts. Well, technically you buy the one total book, which is about this thick, and I cut it up into 2. So I kind of cut it up into the general information, the general sciences like biochem, immunology, public health and all that stuff, which is kind of what first year is all about. And at the end of first year, I kind of took all my notes from first year and kind of saw what was in here and kind of supplemented these notes. Because remember, you'll learn a bunch of stuff in all these years that kind of aren't necessarily on step one. And this will kind of help you focus on what is actually necessary to know. The second half of the book, which I put into like a different kind of binding, is all the pathology and all the normal things based on organ systems. So cardiology, GI. I mean, that's kind of usually what medical schools teach in the second year, kind of organ-based systems and kind of the normacy and the pathology of each system. And I broke that up in the second one, so I didn't have to carry one giant book. It's just now two little small binded little books. And for the first aid books, you can buy that on Amazon. It's typically, I think, the only real place you can buy. I'm sure other bookstores actually have it. Or if you have a bookstore at your medical school, that's where you can buy it. I bought mine off Amazon. It's like usually like $30, $40. Really worth it. That's going to be your Bible. Second resource you want to buy at the end of first year, kind of start of second year, is a book called Pathoma. And what this is some pathologist from, I believe, Chicago, created this book on all the organ systems and all the pathologies that you need to know for step one in a pretty succinct way. A little more detailed than the first aid book because it has actual sentences and kind of explanations of things, which is a great supplementation to the first aid book. And how you buy this is you go to pathoma.com and you buy the video series and the book comes with it. You get mailed the book and you watch the video series and it kind of goes along page by page, bullet point by bullet point, and he talks about it, and I kind of just wrote on notes as he talks. Really helpful, really straight to the point, really high yield. Between this and the first aid book, I think those are like the two Bibles that you should use to studying for step one. I think the third main thing that everyone should use is a Q-Bank. And what that is just a question bank of a bunch of either retired or similar step one questions. And there's a bunch of Q-Banks out there. I think the most popular one is UWorld. And in my opinion, I think UWorld is the best. I think it was the most similar to the actual step one questions in structure and in content. And plus they have great explanations after you take the question and you answer it. It'll tell you if you got it wrong or right. And then it'll have a whole explanation under there on how the answer, how to think of the questions like that. And they have over 2,500 questions on all the different systems. So definitely check that out. I think that's the best resource. They have other ones like Kaplan has one. Pretest I think has one. There's Amboss, which I think is a newer Q-Bank out, which I'm sure are all good. All have the same content, but I think UWorld's been the most proven, the most used, and kind of the most connected with the actual NBME people to kind of tailor their questions to be similar to step one questions. You have to pay for UWorld. It's pretty expensive. It's in the hundreds range, but I think it's probably the most valuable thing for studying for step one that you could buy, to be honest. Because at the end of the day, if there's one thing I could tell you, it's do question after question. Just keep doing questions. And I think that's the best way to study for step one. I should just have that as like a short summary of this whole video. So those three things, first aid, Pathoma, and UWorld question bank is kind of your mainstay. Now there's other things that you can buy to kind of supplement all the information. I think the fourth thing that you should get is called Sketchy. Great idea. Basically, it started off from microbiology. It's basically them drawing a picture for each individual microbe and kind of illustrating a picture to kind of give you memory hooks into remembering things about a certain bug. So for instance, Staph aureus, they'll have, a pencil for penicillin, and they'll draw, Moses having it because he holds a staff, and it reminds you that staph is treated with penicillin. And then they'll have a van in the back, which shows you vancomycin is used to treat MRSA. So there's a bunch of these memory hooks, and it draws a picture, and you just keep watching these videos over and over again, and they kind of stick in your brain. And now every time some bug comes up, I pull up a picture in my mind of that bug and kind of everything about that bug, how to treat it, how, the characteristics of each bug, who gets those kind of bugs, just everything. And I think it's a genius idea. And I think nowadays they even have Sketchy Pharm for pharmacology, which helps you memorize all these different drugs and their drug names and kind of side effects and mechanism of actions. Great resource. I would highly, highly recommend buying that. It is not free. You have to purchase it, but I think that is probably the fourth and kind of last mainstay of studying for step one that you could buy. The only other thing I think I really used was something called osmosis.org or .com. It's just a bunch of videos about different topics. They do a really nice job of illustrating by drawing out, and I'm a very visual learner, so it was super helpful for me and a great way to supplement if I didn't really understand something in Pathoma and first aid or from my notes from class. I would go to that and kind of watch the video. And the videos are average about 5 to 10 minutes. Super helpful. So check them out. None of these people are paying me to say any of this. It's just my own personal preference and my own personal, volition to talk about these things. Now, what to do with these resources and kind of how I use them. And I think kind of the best way to kind of use these resources is I would take, like I said, at the end of first year, I went back to the first half of first aid, kind of filled in all the notes for stuff like public health, for immunology, for biochem, all these general education courses, and kind of supplemented in, and highlighted the important things that I thought were good ways of memorizing it or, facts. And then because second year is focused on organ-based kind of pathology learning, and some schools have that all through first 2 years, but mine only had it for the second year. So what I would do is for instance, we had Cardiology Block first, which was like a couple weeks of cardiology, I believe 6 or 8 weeks. I don't remember too much. It's been a long time ago. I would go through here first before starting the course, kind of see what's important, kind of what is going to be on step one and what's the most highest yield for step one. So when I go to my courses, go to class or study for them, I can kind of focus on these things, and they should line up as to what's the most important, kind of what's the highest yield, but it's not always the case. So kind of use this to guide yourself studying for your courses and for step one at the same time. And then at the end of my cardiology block or whatever block you're on, I kind of went back, reviewed the whole thing, and kind of filled in notes to kind of make this my Bible, so I don't have to go back to my class notes to reference, information. I just only had to go back to here. As far as Pathoma, I kind of used Pathoma a little bit in second year to kind of supplement if I really didn't get something. Maybe they had a better way of explaining it on here. But I kind of watched the videos towards the end of the block, so towards the end of the cardiology block, I went through the whole cardiology section on here and kind of filled in notes. As far as, question bank for, using UWorld during my second year, I kind of refrained from that because unfortunately with UWorld, you can only go through all the questions twice. And I didn't want to use them up too early. I kind of wanted to use my questions to kind of use that as my main stay of studying during dedicated period of time. And what dedicated is basically, we'll get into that, but at the end of second year, most med schools give you a break to study for that big test. And my main idea was to use that time to do question after question after question. Also, I would use Sketchy. I would watch Sketchy Micro every night. I would pick a couple bugs a night and watch the video. Each video is about 10 minutes. I would just go through all the videos on all the microbes and all the viruses. And then when I'd finished the whole series, it's kind of like binge watching The Office, kind of what I do too. And then I'd go back and rewatch them once I've finished all the microbes. And, I went through the whole series probably 5 times, 6 times. And I think that's a great way of studying microbiology. And like I said, there's pharmacology in there too. So like I said, second year is when you really want to start getting all your resources, your Bibles here kind of filled in so that you have your one resource to go to for all the information, or in this case, kind of 2. So let's jump into the end of second year and kind of prepping up to the dedicated time to studying for step 1. So now, dedicated time. Most schools give anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks of time off to study for the test, depending on when you schedule your test. The test is not the same day for everyone. You schedule it online, kind of like the MCAT, whenever you are ready to take it. And depending on when you schedule it, it gives you more or less time. Your school will end on a certain date on second year and then have a start date for third year. And it's just your job in between there to study for and take step 1. And then also to get the passing score to start your third year, because you can't start third year if you don't pass step 1. Before you actually get to dedicated, your school should help you, and I'm sure people are already doing it, set up a routine or a schedule for studying for step 1. Basically, you should have a calendar printed out of each day what you're going to study. And most of the time schools do, each day is broken up into 2, AM and PM, and each one gets filled in with a slot of information. And obviously the ones that are more higher yield, like cardiology and GI and renal, and I would even say neurology, Those 4 you want to spend the most time on, and typically first, because if you do them first, you're going to kind of be reviewing them as you go along through all your time, so you get the most exposure to those. All the stuff like that really is blatant memorization, like biochem and public health and statistics, you kind of worry about towards the end because it's just blatant memorization, and those you just kind of knock out at the end. Each week, I had about 6 weeks, I believe. What I did was I went through first aid. I saw what percentage of pages were dedicated to cardiology first aid in here, and did that for the percentage of time I would study for it on the time I had off. So 6 weeks. So let's say like cardiology is 20% of this book. So I would spend 20% of my time, of my dedicated time, studying cardiology. And I would give and take a little bit depending on what I was strong in. I was really strong in neurology because I was a neuroscience background. So I spent a little bit less time on there and gave it a little more to GI, which I was a little weaker on. So that's kind of how you tailor your schedule, and I can link below my schedule. I'll take a little picture of it and upload it for you guys to kind of see an example, because it's a little complicated to explain it just by words. And most of the time your schools will help you out with this. Your schools will go through this and build a schedule for you depending on your weaknesses and your strengths and kind of how you best study and the time that you have dedicated towards studying for this. Kind of what I did was each week was broken up. For me, I had 6 weeks. So what I would do is I would study for 6 of those days, and then I would take 1 day off. And let me tell you, take a break. Take that day off. You're always going to feel behind. And if you ever try to, wait until you master the information, you're going to be waiting forever. So remember to take those breaks. Taking those breaks daily and also the day off in the week is the most important thing you can do for yourself and for your sanity and, to be honest, for your test, because you need those breaks. You'll burn out very quickly if you try to study all the way through. So what I did was I did 5 days of, studying. On the 6th day, I would take a practice step 1 test, which would take me about half a day to a little bit more than that because there's a lot of questions on there. And then I would take the 7th day off. So that's kind of how my week went in general. And kind of how each day went is kind of like this. So on a studying day, it was always broken up in AM and PM. And literally for each day, I would write out what time you're going to do stuff because it'll give you something to kind of hold to and some kind of guidance. My day, I would wake up every day at 6:30. I knew I was taking my test at 8 a.m. and you'd have to wake up at 6:30 a.m. to get to my test on time and eat breakfast and all that. So just get into a routine of whatever you're going to do on test day, do for your studying, because that's been proven to give you the best results on test day. So I'd wake up at 6:30. Take an hour to shower, eat breakfast. I would do a little meditation in the morning or some yoga, and then start promptly at 7:30 to 8 studying. And what I would do is I would always start my day off with 40 questions from UWorld. I would start whatever topic, so I started off with cardiology first. I did 40 questions in cardiology, see how I did, and kind of review all the questions briefly, not too in depth, and then review in my first aid book and in Pathoma cardiology, all my notes in cardiology. I wouldn't take more notes. There was no really need for that because everything had already been filled out from my first and second year of school. Obviously, if there's something that I was really confused about, I would go back and watch, like I said, the Osmosis videos to kind of help me supplement things that I was kind of confused about. So for instance, I was studying cardiology for 3 days, which means 6 half days. So that means each half day is 1/6. So I should get through 1/6 of the cardiology part in here and in Pathoma in that time span. So in that half day, I should get through 1/6 of all the information in these 2 books. And then I would end my day by taking 40 more questions. And it wasn't always 40. Sometimes I would hit 20. Sometimes I would hit 40, depending on how that day went for me. Anyway, so the AM, I would do 1/6 of the cardiology information in these 2 books. At noon, I would take a lunch break from 12 to 1, eat lunch, socialize a little bit, maybe take a walk because you're sitting most of the day studying. And then at 1 p.m., get back into it for the second half of the day. And in the second half of the day, I would go through 1/6 of the cardiology information as well. And then at the end of the day, probably around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, I would do 40 more questions in cardiology. And then call it a day, or probably around 6 o'clock. And then every day I made sure at 6:30 that I would go to the gym. From about 6:30 to 8 o'clock, I would spend at the gym. I needed that. I think it was super helpful for keeping me motivated, to keep my mind going, my body going. and keep my sanity, to be honest. And I just made it happen. Even if I felt behind, even if I felt like I was slacking, I would always make it happen, because those rests and those breaks and that exercise is going to be more helpful than you'll ever realize. Then I would come home, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, get into bed, watch a couple sketchy micro videos, and kind of review all that. My dog's barking because the mailman's here, and he hates the mailman. I don't know why. He brings us only good stuff, except for bills. You can keep those bills. Like I said, you got to be repetitive with those. Just keep watching those. Keep watching them. Watch some of the Sketchy Pharm if that's for you, and just kind of watch those every night. And by the end of it, I'm not taking notes. I'm not like writing stuff down. I'm just watching those videos, and it's super helpful, and it'll stick. Trust me, it'll stick. You just got to keep watching. Towards the end of my dedicated time, I saved like 1 day or half a day for public health. I would spend 1 day on immunology, 1 day like on the biochemical pathways, just because those were blatant information stuff, and I'm just trying to memorize those things right before the test, instead of trying to memorize them first in the first part of the 6 weeks, because I would never remember them at the end. And also of note too, like if there was ever like blatant memorization with each like organ-based system, for instance, like cardiology, like if they wanted to know the type of myosin or the type of troponin, like troponin C, I would just say what kind of troponin on a flashcard and write it on the back. And I had a stack of flashcards, which is blatant memorization stuff from all the organ systems. And then I would kind of review those every night as well. A little bit about the questions, the 40 questions. The 40 questions at night, I would always try to incorporate previous organ-based system stuff. So like I did GI second, I did renal third. So when I was doing my second half of questions at the end of the day in renal, I would incorporate cardiology and GI questions into those last 40 to kind of get like a review and a kind of a mixture of questions, because that's how the test is. The test isn't like by blocks. It's a mixture of all questions and just 7 different blocks of random questions. So that kind of helped me get prepared for that. Let's talk about the week leading up to the actual test. One thing I can advise for the week coming up to the test is the day before the test, take it off. Don't really study. Don't go intense on that day. Give your brain a rest so that you can go into the test feeling a little, like fresher. And it's the same principle as like playing any sport. You don't go hard the day before. You still practice a little bit, but don't go as hard as you have been to kind of give yourself a rest for the big day. And then what I did is I spent the 3 prior days of that kind of reviewing everything, kind of reviewing the topics that I had difficult time on, kind of reviewing all the questions that I missed or got wrong on UWorld. And by this time, you should have basically all the questions in UWorld done. I said the one thing I can keep giving advice on is do more questions than you think you should, because I think questions is the best way to study for this test. So if you want to do more than 80 questions a day, I definitely would highly recommend that. Now let's talk about test day. This it's going to be a stressful day. Try to get some sleep. By now, you should have built a pattern. Get a good breakfast in. Drink as much coffee as you have been while you were studying. Don't try to drink more to try to get you to be more amped or to be, a better test taker, because that won't work. Go with your gut. Always go with your gut. I realized that going with your gut was probably the best thing for me. And if not, go with C. C always seems right. After your test, you're going to feel like crap. Most people will feel like crap. Some people, those A students, those gunners, as medical students call it, will feel fine. Fine, whatever. That's 1 or 2 people out of each class. That's okay. Go out, drink. Don't tell people I told you to do that. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this. I know it was a long thing, but I think there was a lot of detail that needed to be said, a lot of detail that will really help some people out. Like I said, don't just take my opinion for it. Go watch other videos out there. Go talk to your classmates. Go talk to your upperclassmen. I think they'll be the best help for you in whatever specific medical school you're in. It sucks that we have to do this. It's one of the hardest times in our lives. We don't see friends, we don't see family, and most people don't understand that you're studying and the intensity that you're studying. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you guys have any other questions or kind of things I didn't touch on, leave them in the comments below and I'll kind of answer them as you guys put them down there. And if you guys have any like other things that you want me to talk about, let me know. I missed you guys all. I miss communicating with you guys. I'm sorry I haven't been here in almost a year now. But there's a lot of cool things coming. So stay tuned for those things and they'll be up soon. All right. Peace.